The morning sun spilled through the large glass windows of Henderson's gun shop, painting streaks of gold across the floor. The shop was quiet except for the faint hum of the air conditioner and the soft clinking of metal as rifles were cleaned and displayed. It was just another slow day, or at least that's what everyone thought, until the doorbell jingled. The sound made everyone look up. An old man stood in the doorway. His back was slightly bent. His hands trembled just enough to show his age, and his faded red shirt looked like it had seen better days. But his eyes, sharp, steady, and strangely calm, moved across the room like he had been there before. A few younger men standing near the counter exchanged amused looks. One of them whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Lost your way, Grandpa? The toy store's down the street." The old man didn't reply. He simply adjusted the worn cap on his head and walked forward. Behind the counter stood Lisa, the shop manager, a woman in her late 30s with sharp eyes and an impatient tone. She noticed the old man and sighed. "Sir, can I help you?" "Yes," he said softly, his voice gravelly but firm. "I'm looking for a rifle. Something reliable." Lisa raised an eyebrow. "For what purpose, sir?" The man looked around before answering. "For respect," he said. The answer confused everyone. The young men burst out laughing again. One of them, Jake, couldn't resist. "Respect? That's rich. You planning to scare pigeons with it?" The old man gave a small smile but said nothing. His calmness only made their laughter grow louder. Lisa leaned on the counter, annoyed. "Sir, we don't usually sell high-powered rifles to, well, seniors. These aren't toys." The man nodded. "I understand," he said quietly. Then, his hand brushed against the glass counter, where a classic M24 sniper rifle sat. Sleek, precise, deadly. He stared at it for a long moment, almost like he was remembering an old friend. Jake noticed his gaze. "You even know what that is?" he mocked. The old man looked at him, his eyes glinting slightly. "Yes," he said slowly, "but the one I used had a longer barrel and less shine." The laughter died for a moment. Lisa frowned. Something in the man's tone felt different. Too real to be a bluff. "Sir," she said carefully, "you used one of these before?" The old man didn't answer. Instead, he walked over to the wall where the rifles hung in a neat row. His steps were slow but steady, each one echoing in the quiet store. He stopped in front of a display case and whispered, almost to himself, "They've changed." Lighter, but colder. Lisa crossed her arms. "Sir, if you're not here to buy something, I'm going to have to ask you to—" Before she could finish, a young soldier, standing near the back of the shop, spoke up. He had been silent until now. "Let him be," he said. "He's not just browsing." Everyone turned toward him. Lisa frowned. "And how would you know?" The soldier pointed toward the old man's right wrist. "That tattoo," he said quietly. "It's the mark of the 101st Airborne Division. That's not something you find in a retirement home." A hush fell over the room. The old man looked down at his wrist as if noticing the tattoo for the first time in years. The faded ink, an eagle and the number 101, seemed almost ghostly against his wrinkled skin. Jake swallowed hard. "You mean he's military?" The soldier nodded. "Not just military. That's an elite unit." Lisa's tone softened slightly. "Sir, what's your name?" He looked up, his eyes steady again. "Hayes," he said. "Walter Hayes." For a second the name hung in the air. Then the soldier's eyes widened. "Wait, Walter Hayes? The sniper from Hill 52? Walter didn't confirm or deny it. He just smiled faintly. "That was a long time ago," he murmured. The soldier straightened, his expression turning respectful. "Sir, my grandfather told me about that mission." "You—" Lisa interrupted, still half skeptical. "Okay, let's not jump to conclusions. Could be coincidence." But Jake wasn't convinced anymore. His mocking grin was gone. He looked at Walter with curiosity now. "So, you were really there? In Vietnam?" Walter's gaze went distant. For a moment it looked like he wasn't in the gun shop anymore. His mind had drifted back to the dense jungles, the echo of gunfire, the faces of brothers who never came back. "Yes," he said finally, "and I learned one thing there." Everyone leaned in slightly. Walter turned his eyes toward Jake and Lisa. "Weapons don't make a man dangerous," he said. "Disrespect does." The words landed heavy. No one laughed this time. Lisa shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, I didn't mean to offend you earlier." Walter gave a small nod. "You didn't," he said calmly. "But many do." The silence stretched again. Then breaking it, Walter looked at the rifle one last time. "I'd like to test that one," he said, pointing to the M24. Lisa hesitated. "Sir, we can't let customers handle loaded weapons inside the store." "I won't fire it," Walter said. "Just want to feel the weight." Lisa exchanged glances with the soldier, who nodded slightly. Reluctantly, she unlocked the display and handed the rifle over. Walter took it slowly, almost reverently, his trembling hands suddenly steadied as he held the weapon. The way his fingers moved across the barrel, the scope, the bolt, it was like watching a musician play an old, forgotten song. Everyone in the room was silent. Jake whispered, "He's done this before." Walter aimed the empty rifle toward the far wall, eyes focused, breathing calm. Then, lowering it, he turned back to Lisa. "It's balanced," he said, "but the grip, a little too smooth. Slips when it gets wet." The soldier nodded knowingly. "He's right." Lisa didn't know what to say. The man who looked weak and fragile moments ago now stood like a soldier again, firm, composed, and unshakable. He handed the rifle back carefully. "Thank you," he said. "I'll take it." Lisa blinked. "You're buying it?" "Yes," Walter said. "It's for someone special." "Who?" Jake asked quietly. Walter smiled softly. "My grandson. He just joined the army." For the first time since he entered, the room was silent, not from mockery, but from respect. The soldier at the back stepped forward and saluted. Walter nodded, took his purchase receipt, and walked toward the door. As he left, the sunlight caught the small medal pinned inside his jacket, an old silver star. The bell above the door rang again, and this time nobody laughed. Outside, the old man paused, looking at the horizon. There was a faint, knowing smile on his face. Inside the shop, Jake whispered, "Who was that man?" The soldier replied quietly, "A legend you just disrespected." And just like that, the day that began with laughter ended in silence. The door of Henderson's gun shop closed softly behind Walter Hayes, leaving behind a silence that seemed to cling to the air. The faint ring of the bell was the last sound before everything fell still again. Inside, everyone remained frozen for a few seconds. Lisa behind the counter, Jake near the display case, and the young soldier still standing near the back. Jake finally broke the silence. "Did that really just happen?" Lisa nodded slowly, still watching the door. "I think it did." The soldier stepped forward, his eyes thoughtful. "Walter Hayes," he murmured. "That name isn't just some random old guy's name. He's the man from the Ravenwood mission. Classified operation, years ago. No one was supposed to survive it." Jake frowned. "Then how is he alive?" The soldier looked at him, his voice dropping low. "That's the question, isn't it?" Outside, Walter walked down the cracked sidewalk, the wrapped rifle case held carefully in his hand. His boots made slow, steady sounds against the concrete. The autumn wind carried a faint chill, and the smell of rain hung in the air. He reached the edge of the street where an old truck waited. Faded green paint, dusty windows, and a military tag still fixed near the bumper. Walter placed the rifle gently on the passenger seat, then took a deep breath. For a moment, his hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Not yet," he whispered to himself. "Just one last time." Then he started the engine. Back in the shop, Lisa tried to shake off the strange tension. "All right, everyone, show's over," she said, forcing a smile. "Let's get back to work." But the soldier didn't move. He was staring at the counter where Walter had placed his hand earlier. "What's wrong?" Lisa asked. He pointed at the glass. "There's something carved there." Lisa leaned closer. Faint but clear, scratched into the glass by a knife or ring, were 3 small letters, R52. Jake tilted his head. "What does that mean?" The soldier's expression darkened. "Raven. 52 Hill 52, the mission he survived." Lisa frowned. "And why would he carve that here?" The soldier didn't answer. Instead, he took out his phone and started searching. After a few seconds, he found a grainy article from decades ago, a black and white photo of young soldiers, smiling in the mud. One face stood out. Walter Hayes. The headline read, "The Lost Operation, Entire Unit Missing, One Survivor Found." Jake read over his shoulder. "So, he was the only one left alive?" The soldier nodded. "Yes, and after that he disappeared. No one saw him again." Lisa looked uneasy. "Until today." Meanwhile, miles away, Walter's truck turned down a quiet dirt road lined with dry trees. The road led to an abandoned shooting range, one that had been closed for over a decade. A broken sign hung crookedly, "Military use only." Over a decade. A broken sign hung crookedly, "Military use only." Walter parked the truck, opened the door, and stepped out slowly. The place was silent, except for the distant cry of a crow. He carried the rifle to a wooden table under a broken shelter and unwrapped it. The M24 sniper rifle gleamed softly under the cloudy sky. He ran his hand along the barrel. "Still too smooth," he muttered. Then, pulling out a small pouch from his jacket, he rubbed the metal with dark ash until the shine dulled. After a long pause, he took a deep breath and lifted the rifle to his shoulder. Through the scope, the distant trees blurred into focus. His breathing slowed. Calm, measured, professional. Then he whispered something no one could hear. A low hum, like the whisper of steel, echoed in the wind. Back in town, Lisa locked the shop and glanced at the parking lot outside. Something about Walter's presence had left her uneasy, almost haunted. She walked to the soldier who was still reading through his phone. "Hey," she said softly. "You think we should report it? Maybe to the police?" The soldier shook his head. "No, not yet. If that really was Walter Hayes, the police won't find him. He doesn't want to be found," Jake frowned. "But why now? Why come to a gun store after all these years?" The soldier looked at him. Maybe he's preparing for something. Night fell quietly over the hills outside town. The abandoned shooting range was bathed in pale moonlight. Walter sat on an old wooden bench, staring at a faded photo in his hand. It showed 5 young men, soldiers, standing together, smiling. On the back, written in neat letters, "Ravenwood Team, 1971. One by one, he touched each face. His voice was low, filled with grief. "Tommy, Ricks, Mason, all gone. And now?" He looked toward the dark forest beyond the range. A shadow moved between the trees. Walter's grip on the rifle tightened. "You finally found me." At the same moment, Lisa's phone buzzed on her bedside table. Half asleep, she reached for it and saw a message from an unknown number. Just 2 words. "Don't trust the soldier." She sat up, heart racing. "What?" Before she could reply, another message appeared. "He's not who he says he is." At the range, Walter stood silently as a man stepped out of the shadows. A tall figure in a black jacket, face hidden under a cap. "Walter Hayes," the man said in a calm, cold voice. "You should have stayed gone." Walter didn't move. "You were there too," he said quietly. The man nodded. "Yes, but I did what I had to do." Walter's eyes hardened. "You betrayed us. You left them to die." The man's hand moved toward his holster. "You can't change the past." Walter lifted the rifle slightly, not aiming yet. "I'm not trying to. I'm here to end it." For a long moment, the 2 men stood facing each other under the moonlight. 2 ghosts from the same war, caught between memory and vengeance. Then a sound echoed in the distance. A car engine. The man turned his head slightly. In that split second, Walter moved. The rifle clicked softly, metal against metal. But before he could fire, headlights flashed across the range. A black SUV rolled to a stop. Armed men stepped out, silent, organized, precise. The man in the cap smirked. "You're too late, old friend." Walter's eyes narrowed. "We'll see about that." He ducked behind the bench as the first shot rang out, splintering the wood beside him. The quiet night exploded into chaos. The whispers of steel turned into thunder, and in that storm of bullets and shadows, the truth that Walter Hayes had carried for 50 years was finally waking up. Gunfire tore through the silence of the night. The once dead shooting range was alive again, but not with practice shots, this time with real bullets. Walter Hayes hit the ground behind an old wooden table, his breath steady despite the chaos. The sharp crack of rifles echoed through the cold air. Splinters of wood flew past his face. He moved slowly, deliberately, like a man who had lived through this before. Across the range, the black SUV's headlights sliced through the darkness, casting ghostly shadows on the trees. 4 armed men took positions, moving with trained precision. "Spread out!" the man in the cap shouted. "He's not walking away this time." Walter adjusted the rifle against his shoulder. "You never change, Mason," he muttered under his breath. He peeked through the scope. 1 man behind the SUV, another flanking left. He took a breath, squeezed the trigger once, bang. The shot rang out clean and sharp. The man behind the SUV dropped instantly. Walter rolled to the side, shifting position before the others could lock onto him. Bullets slammed into the table where he'd just been. Mason's voice boomed again. "You think you can end this, old man? You're the last loose end." Walter's eyes narrowed. "Maybe," he whispered, "but I'm not the one running from ghosts." He moved again, crawling toward the stone barrier that bordered the range. His movements were slower than they once were, but every step was calculated. He knew every inch of this place, the air filled with gunpowder and smoke. Then, silence. Walter's heartbeat slowed. He knew that silence. The calm before the next move. He looked through the scope again. No one. Not a sound. Not a shadow. Then suddenly, a voice came from behind him. "Drop it, Walter." He froze. The voice was close, calm, steady. He turned his head slightly. Mason stood 10 feet behind him, pistol raised, eyes cold. "You always were too good for your own kind," Mason said. "You should have stayed dead." Walter's tone was calm. "And you should have stayed loyal," Mason laughed softly. "Loyalty doesn't pay the bills, old man." "You think anyone remembers what we did?" Ravenwood was erased. You were supposed to disappear with it. Walter lowered his rifle slightly, but kept his finger near the trigger. What really happened at Ravenwood, Mason? You tell me that before you shoot. Mason's smile faded. You already know. Tell me anyway. Mason took a deep breath. We weren't supposed to rescue those men. The mission wasn't a rescue. It was a cleanup. They sent us to eliminate witnesses. Command wanted the truth buried. Walter's grip tightened. And you followed that order. Mason nodded. I did what soldiers do. You hesitated. You tried to save them. You ruined everything. Walter's voice turned sharp. They were our brothers. Mason shrugged. Collateral damage. You call it betrayal. I call it survival. The two men stared at each other. 50 years of history burning between them. Then Mason raised his pistol. Goodbye, Sergeant Hayes. Before he could pull the trigger, a blinding light flashed from the tree line. Headlights from another vehicle tearing through the dirt road. The distraction lasted 1 second, but it was all Walter needed. He twisted, rolling onto his shoulder, and fired. The shot struck Mason's pistol, knocking it out of his hand. Mason stumbled back, clutching his arm, his face twisted in pain. The new vehicle screeched to a stop. Doors slammed. 2 figures stepped out, Lisa and the young soldier from the gun shop. Walter blinked in disbelief. What are you two doing here? Lisa shouted. You think we were just going to sit there after seeing that message? The soldier aimed his sidearm toward Mason, covering Walter. Sir, you okay? Walter nodded, breath steady. Stay behind cover. There's more coming. He was right. From the forest's edge, more shadows moved, armed men advancing quietly. Mason's backup had arrived. Lisa ducked behind a rock, eyes wide with fear. How many are there? Walter checked his rifle. Enough to end this, if we don't move smart. The soldier crouched beside him. We can call for help. No, Walter interrupted firmly. No one can know about this. Not yet. Mason laughed weakly, holding his wounded arm. Still playing the hero, Hayes. You'll never stop them. The ones pulling the strings now are way above us. Walter's voice was cold. Then I'll start by cutting the strings one by one. He looked at the soldier. Kid, cover the right side. Short bursts. Lisa, keep your head down and count the flashes. What flashes? She asked, panicking. Walter loaded another round, eyes hard. The ones that'll tell us where they are. The firefight began again. Bullets sliced through the night air. Sparks flew off metal as Walter fired with surgical precision. Each shot was clean, efficient. The young soldier matched his rhythm, shooting from the right flank. The men in the forest struggled to advance. Lisa, shaking but determined, whispered the count. 2 left, 3, no 4. Walter moved position again, reloading fast despite his age. Mason crawled toward the SUV, trying to escape. Walter saw him through the scope. For a moment he hesitated. Don't do it, the soldier said softly. He's not worth it. Walter exhaled. He's not the one I'm after. He turned the rifle toward the tree line and fired. A man in a black suit, different from the others, fell instantly. When he hit the ground, something shiny rolled from his jacket. A silver badge with the letters SOG engraved on it. Lisa picked it up, trembling. What's SOG? What's SOG? Walter's face hardened. Special Operations Group. The same unit that sent us to die at Ravenwood. The soldier frowned. You mean, they're still active? Walter nodded slowly. And they still clean up their mistakes. The forest grew quiet again. The gunfire faded. Mason was gone. The SUV's engine roared in the distance, then vanished into the night. Walter lowered his rifle, exhausted but focused. Lisa stepped closer. Sir, what's really happening? Why are they after you? Walter didn't answer at first. He looked up at the moon, his expression unreadable. Because, he said finally, I didn't stay silent when they ordered me to. Lisa swallowed hard. And now? He looked at her, his eyes burning with quiet resolve. Now they'll learn the cost of waking a ghost. Hours later, the range was empty again. The wind howled through the trees. A single shell casing gleamed in the dirt, catching the moonlight. Far away, inside a hidden office, a man in a black suit watched surveillance footage from the gun shop. The moment Walter walked in, the carved letters on the glass, and the firefight at the range. He turned to his assistant. He's alive, he said. Activate Protocol Raven. The assistant hesitated. Sir, that mission was shut down decades ago. The man's cold smile didn't fade. Then it's time to open it again. The cold dawn light crept across the small cabin deep in the forest. Walter Hayes sat by the window, his rifle beside him, eyes fixed on the tree line. He hadn't slept all night. Lisa made coffee in silence, her hands still trembling. The young soldier checked their ammo, half-empty magazines, scratched metal, the smell of smoke still clinging to their clothes. They'll come again. Walter said quietly. Lisa looked at him. Can't we just leave? Go somewhere safe? Walter shook his head slowly. There's no safe place when you're marked by the people who own the sky. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small flash drive, sealed in metal. Everything they tried to bury at Ravenwood is here. Names, operations, proof. It's what they've been chasing. Lisa stared at it. Why not destroy it? Because truth should never burn, Walter said. Even if no one believes it anymore. The young soldier stepped closer. Sir, if you have proof, we can expose them. Send it to someone in command. Walter gave a faint smile. Kid, when the command is the disease, you don't send the cure through them. He stood, his movement slow but deliberate. It ends today. Outside, the forest was still, too still. Then a soft crunch of boots on gravel broke the silence. Walter's grip tightened on his rifle. Through the cracked glass, he saw figures in black advancing. Silent, coordinated, professional. Lisa whispered. How many? Walter's eyes didn't blink. Enough to bury the truth again. The soldier took position by the back door. Lisa crouched behind the table, clutching the flash drive like it was life itself. The first gunshot shattered the quiet morning. Bullets ripped through the cabin walls. Wood splintered, glass shattered. Walter returned fire with clean, precise shots. Each bullet found its mark, but they kept coming. Smoke filled the small room. The air was thick with gunpowder and fear. The soldier was hit in the shoulder, falling back. Lisa screamed, dragging him behind cover. Stay down! Walter shouted. He moved to the doorway, reloading, eyes sharp. His breathing was steady, his hands firm. For a man his age, he fought like time had never touched him. Then, silence again. The forest stilled. A voice came through the trees. Calm, cold, familiar. Put down the weapon, Walter. Walter's heart stopped for a beat. That voice, he knew it. A tall man stepped out of the shadows. Gray suit, black gloves, emotionless eyes. The same man from the footage room. You've caused quite a mess, the man said. You could have just stayed forgotten. Walter's rifle stayed raised. Forgotten isn't the same as dead, the man smirked. We're not here to kill you, not yet. We just want what you took. Lisa clutched the drive tighter. Walter saw her from the corner of his eye. He took a slow breath. You'll have to take it from my hands. The man nodded to his team. Then that's what we'll do. Gunfire erupted again. Walter moved with precision, taking out one after another. But he was slowing. A bullet grazed his leg. Another hit his arm. He dropped behind the wall, blood soaking through his sleeve. Lisa crawled toward him. Walter, you're hurt! He smiled faintly. Not the first time. He handed her the rifle. You remember what I said about the flashes? She nodded tearfully. Then count them, he said softly, placing the flash drive in her hand. And when it's quiet again, run. Before she could speak, he pushed her back toward the door. Walter stood again, blood running down his arm. Rifle raised one last time. He stepped into the open doorway, facing the forest full of enemies. The wind was cold. The light was soft. For a moment it felt like Ravenwood all over again. He took a deep breath, steadied his aim, and whispered, For those who never made it home. The final shot echoed through the forest. When the smoke cleared, the cabin was silent. Hours later, a rescue team arrived, called in by the young soldier before he blacked out. They found Lisa sitting on the dirt, clutching the flash drive, tears streaming down her face. Walter Hayes was gone. But the camera on his chest, one he'd worn since Ravenwood, still blinked red. It had recorded everything. Days later, the footage appeared online. No one knew who uploaded it or how. It spread faster than anyone could stop it. The truth was out. Ravenwood was real, and in every corner of the internet, one phrase appeared again and again. For those who never made it home. For those who never made it home.